David Keirsey nicknamed them the provider, and I have also heard caregiver and supporter. In general, the ESFJ stereotype is a mother-hen sort of person, louder and more expressive than the ISFJ, and therefore without any mystery to them. They are the ever-smiling bourgeois worker bees having tea at exactly 2 o'clock on lace dollies poured from tasteful flower-decorated china pots. If they don't have such fine things, they'll do their best to pretend, and if they have even finer things, one redeeming characteristic granted to them is their philanthropy and generousness. I intend to grant them a deal more than that. As with all of these videos, I aim to describe the core of the ESFJ profile, and the typical ESFJ as an individual just as capable or incapable of becoming a hero of the history books as any other personality. To begin, let's break down what constitutes the ESFJ functionally. They are a judging type, meaning that they prefer extroverted judging and introverted perceiving. This means that they base their judgment criteria on objective outside information, while simply observing and drinking in their subjective information and experiences. You could say that they are more aggressive towards the outside world and more receptive towards their inner experience. Their preferred way of doing this is through extroverted feeling and introverted sensation. Extroverted feeling is accommodating. It adapts to objectively understood values, becoming whatever is appropriate, harmonizing, or desirable for a given situation. Meanwhile, introverted sensation perceives reality as it is, but invests its perceptions with subjectivity and recalls these subjective memories in similar situations. It is recording, or if you like, cataloging or recalling. Third, they are very similar to the ISFJ. Both prefer extroverted feeling and introverted sensation. The ESFJ, however, prefers extroverted feeling more than introverted sensation. Nevertheless, they are in some sense the same type, or at least sister types. I personally like to call SFJ types the guardians, because they thoroughly examine reality and compare it with all the past experiences they've collected in their database, and then decide how best to harmonize with or provide for or protect a situation. Of course, guardian is merely a nickname to help me remember the SFJ nature, and does not mean SFJs are necessarily interested in guardianship as we normally think of it. The ESFJ then is a, quote, guardian for whom accommodation of others is more important than their subjective perceptions. They are primarily concerned with harmonizing appropriately to objective standards of sentiment. The word I like to use to remember the ESFJ nature is cooperation. This word may not seem any more impressive than the stereotype. Cooperation is often thought of as not rocking the boat, which does not make for a very interesting personality. However, this is an oversimplification in the case of the ESFJ. They have great potential for gaining others' cooperation, or eliciting it between two otherwise estranged parties, and thus using it as a tool to bring people together, or even summon them into a force that can work as a single powerful unit. At least this is how ESFJs seem to solve problems, by encouraging cooperation between parties, by helping people to recognize their similarities and common interests and become more and more of a true human family, more and more one united whole that can accomplish anything, and the ESFJ can be very good at this kind of persuasion. For one, the ESFJ is already well tuned to objective valuations, in other words, to what is generally considered valuable, normal, appropriate, or comforting in various contexts. As I've mentioned in other videos, the FETI axis is rather like an individual lost in a foreign country, trying to learn the people's language so that they can fit in with them. The ESFJ then, preferring extroverted feeling to any other function, is particularly good at the fitting in side of it, at wielding the known language and customs in a way that is pleasing and familiar to others. Granted that they are good at it, the ESFJ can be a very enjoyable person to be around, very kind and courteous, friendly, forgiving, generous, and perhaps above all, easy to talk to, in the sense that they want to listen to you, have genuine concern for you, and will make sure that you know this is the case. If anything, the ESFJ's extroverted feeling drives them to give up of themselves for others, or at least to resonate deeply with that sentiment. The ESFJ, like the ISFJ, tends to be service-oriented. Other personalities are by all means willing to help, but this is peculiarly present in the SFJ types because it is combined with introverted sensation. As I described for the ISFJ, I think a good way to look at introverted sensation is as a sensitivity to one's impressions of the environment, rather like a sensitive photographic plate or the vibrations along a spider's web. This web is grounded and focused on things as they are, and not as they could be, which tends to give SI types a down-to-earth practical perspective, whether when approaching typical down-to-earth things or abstract philosophical things. In any case, the ESFJ demonstrates a certain grounded attitude to things that can be very helpful and stabilizing. As far as service and self-sacrifice goes, like the ISFJ, the ESFJ is more focused on the practical things one can do. Very sensitive to the realistic needs of others, or more accurately, they are sensitive to their own subjective interpretation of others, which can offer great insight or misunderstanding. In any case, one can generally expect the ESFJ to prefer a down-to-earth approach to things. The ESFJ philosophy, from their perspective anyway, is like an old truck. It's nothing fancy and it's a bit beat up, but the engine and all its essential parts have been kept running for 40 years. It's a tough thing and simple. It doesn't have air conditioning or radio or half the electronics we find in cars nowadays, and in many ways it is, for that very reason, so efficient. The point here is that one thing that comes across from ESFJs and generally from any introverted sensation type is a sense of being well-grounded, and more than that, of being reliable and disciplined. If they can manage it, they will keep running the same now that they did 40 years ago. That all being said, the most important aspect of the ESFJ personality is still cooperation. The combination of dominant extroverted feeling and auxiliary introverted sensation makes the ESFJ personality very interested in human connections and all their subtleties that impress the ESFJ. They like to work with people, and in the end are trying to become one with people, to cooperate fully with them, to develop as rewarding a give-and-take relationship as possible. Beyond that, the ESFJ loves the feeling of family, or of being a part of a united group or one cooperative whole. The ESFJ's pathos is, "We're all in this together." For the ESFJ, if that motto is true, then it demands certain kinds of action. If we're all truly stuck together on this planet, we've got to get along. There's no reward for isolating oneself by either not interacting with others or by interacting negatively with others and forcibly pushing them away, or by exalting one's own preferences above those of others. So the ESFJ tries to be very kind and warm and well-connected with people. I think Harry S. Truman summed it up when he said, "The rule around here is that employees may not speak to the president. I break it every day and make 'em speak to me." However, for all this group hug mentality, the ESFJ does not necessarily become a pushover. The ESFJ has a sense of propriety. This propriety is rooted in how a cooperative group is to remain a group, and not become infected with selfishness that rots it from the inside out. This is done through organized cooperation. Everyone has their responsibilities and duty, which is adjusted as is needed to ensure no one is oppressed or trampled in any way. Should someone begin denying this organization, the ESFJ will not play around because it threatens the good and health of the family. The ESFJ is more than happy to be forgiving of human folly so long as it doesn't begin encroaching on the ESFJ's conception of objective values and the cooperative rules that help keep the human family together. When this is done, the ESFJ can become tough and sharp as nails in defense of what they deem correct. For instance, Harry S. Truman, as an explanation for firing Douglas MacArthur, said, "I fired him because he wouldn't respect the authority of the president. I didn't fire him because he was a dumb son of a bitch, although he was, but that's not against the law for generals." In other words, if Douglas MacArthur is being what Truman deems an idiot, that's not Truman's concern, so long as MacArthur continues to fulfill his responsibility as a general. But once he stops fulfilling that role and begins interfering with the cooperative ties between people, for instance his subservience to the president, then he has to be cut off because he no longer is serving the group, but only himself. There are two other points I'd like to make about the ESFJ concerning their tertiary and inferior functions. First, the ESFJ's tertiary function is extroverted intuition. Like the ESTJ, this manifests along with introverted sensation as both a meticulousness and a multifaceted interest. For the ESFJ, intuitions are an objective matter. They are something very much invested in objects, uncontaminated by any personal or subjective ideas, as it is with introverted intuition. As a result, their intuitions are much more defined, clear, and, if you will, practical, at least in comparison to introverted intuition. Second, the ESFJ's extroverted feeling represses their introverted thinking function, meaning they repress personal logical principles. For the ENFJ, this means a tendency to wander from what is certainly true into exaggeration for the sake of effect. For the ESFJ, who is less concerned with presentation of a vision as they are with pragmatic service, this repression manifests as a tendency to lose themselves in harmonizing with people. In other words, in their attempts to unite people into one family, they may make too many concessions in order to align with public opinion, and forget their own sense of identity or ethics in the process. When they are in Rome, they do as the Romans do, and this could include attending the gladiatorial games. So, in summary, the ESFJ is cooperative and a good eliciter of cooperation, focused on and sensitive to the subtleties of people's connections with each other, and seeking through good-natured adaptation to persuade unity and family feeling among the human race. They are practical, down-to-earth, but very courteous, warm-hearted, and enjoyable company. Unfortunately, they repress introverted thinking, meaning they may give away their own sense of ethics in favor of cooperating with the public. The best list of example ESFJs can be found at celebritytypes.com. and includes Harry S. Truman, Colin Powell, Andrew Carnegie, Sam Walton, Pope Francis, Sarah Palin, Larry King, Barbara Walters, Allison Hannigan, Anne Hathaway, Penelope Cruz, Jennifer Garner, Whitney Houston, Celine Dion, Elton John, Hugh Jackman, Vin Diesel, Adam Young, and Jamie Bell. Thanks for watching, and for all the ESFJs out there, thank you for your warm hearts, practical minds, and for trying to help us realize the connections that unite us all.